And pardon us, I believe this is recorded online, so welcome to you guys who are there. Okay. Testing. Oh, wonderful. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for coming back for this afternoon session. I think hydrotherapy is probably one of the most fun classes to present. I enjoy it. It's usually pretty interactive, and I hope that it's a blessing to you guys today. Who is familiar with hydrotherapy, or have you used hydrotherapy before? You took a cold shower? Hot and cold shower, okay. Contrast shower, wonderful. I got a sort of back there. What kind of hydrotherapy have you used?
I tried hot and cold in the shower, kind of like in the shower or something to that effect. For instance, let's say it's the hand that has a problem. I'll put hot and cold, then hot and cold over the faucet. And come to think of it, there have also been some situations where we would use hot towels, let's say, and cold towels, and go back and forth like that.
So you need to change your hand to an actual hand raise.
Yeah, so
right?
it started coming back to me.
Okay. You just didn't remember. All right. So principles of hydrotherapy, this is kind of like an introduction. I tried to keep things where you have good information, but without being too deep and boring, and where you can get a lot of practical tips to use. So first off, what is hydrotherapy? It's simple, right? Hydro means water. So it's the use of water in each of its three forms to assist the body in its healing process. What are the three forms of water?
Ice.
Steam. So ice would be solid and liquid. There you go. Liquid, solid, and gas in the form of actual water, ice, and steam. So why is water so beneficial to us? That might be kind of small for you guys to see, but it is abundant. First of all, like we all have lakes nearby, through the oceans, you have rain, right? Water's abundant, it's cheap, it's readily available, it's easily applied. It exists in 3 states, and all 3 of those states are usable for therapeutic purposes. It's non-irritant, it's heat conductive, so it imparts, I'm trying to read that up there, imparts and absorbs heat readily. So it's a good way of transferring heat and stays warm. And water is very much a part of us and who we are. So I had these 2 little diagrams. Again, they might be kind of small for you to read, but the one on the left talks about the different percentages of water that's in each of our organs. So our brain is made of 75% water. Now, if our brain is 75% water and we're dehydrated, how do you think that might affect our minds?
It's not gonna work right.
Yeah, so believe it or not, some of the first symptoms of dehydration is brain fog, fatigue, tiredness, headaches. If you have a headache, the first thing you should ask yourself is, when was the last time I drank some water? Right, so blood is 83% water. If we're not getting enough water in our bodies, how does that affect our blood, you think? It gets thicker. It's harder for it to flow. It's more work for your heart to pump it through the system. And then you can have high blood pressure. You're at higher risk of clots and things like that. So your heart, 79%. Your bones even have water in them, believe it or not.
Wow.
Your muscles, your liver, and your kidneys. Those are the percentages. And then the diagram on the other side is going over some of the things that water does for you, from saliva, which helps us with our digestion, to our brains being able to manufacture hormones and neurotransmitters. It helps to regulate our body temperature. When you get too hot, you sweat. It acts as a shock absorber for the brain and the spinal cord. It converts food. It helps break down food into nutrition that we need to survive. Helps deliver oxygen, lubricates our joints, flushes waste out of the body. It's important, right? It's a lot of things that water does for us. Every single cell in our body needs water to survive and to do its duties. So is hydrotherapy in the Bible?
Yes. Yeah.
Where? Baptism? Yeah, Naaman. I never thought of baptism as being hydrotherapy, but I guess that works, right?
That's true.
You're receiving spiritual healing by being buried in the water. But the story that I'm thinking of is the story of Naaman. It's found in 2 Kings 5, and I have verses 10 and 14 on the screen. It says, "And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. Then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean." Now, leprosy in the Bible, we don't have to deal with leprosy today, thankfully, but what do we know about leprosy? It was highly contagious. Was it curable? You couldn't cure it, right? Lepers were outcasts. It didn't matter whether you were the king or who you were. If you had leprosy, you were now an outcast of society. You had to announce to everybody around that you were a leper so that nobody would come near you. You lost human contact. It was a horrible disease. And it was looked at as a curse of God. Okay, so Naaman comes down with leprosy. He goes to the prophet, expecting the prophet's going to snap his fingers, and he's going to be all better. And instead he's told to go to the Jordan. Now the Jordan, was that a pretty river?
No.
It was a really muddy,
Yeah.
I don't know, imagine God wanting you to go to a swamp or a pond or something and dip yourself in it. It's
Now it's so dirty. I don't know.
Yeah, right?
Jesus.
So Naaman had viewed that, if you remember the story, he was insulted by that.
Yeah.
You want me to do what? And it was his servant who was like, hey, if you were told to do a great thing, you would have loved to show off how you could do it. But something so simple, what do you have to lose? And so he's like, all right, good point. He goes to the river, and we know that the outcome is his leprosy is cured. Now, what component of the water in the Jordan River cured him? Okay, it didn't have anything to do with the water, right? It was the faith. So if he went and he just dipped 1 time, would he have been cured? Or if he did it 6 times? No, he had to do it 7 times, right?
God says 7 is completion.
There you go. 7's the number of completion. But what I like about this example in this story is the fact that God used water as a medium. He didn't have to, right? He could have just snapped his fingers and said, you're healed. But there was something that Naaman had to do to demonstrate his faith. And then God worked through that to bring healing. And that's an important part, that whenever we use natural remedies, whether it's hydrotherapy, massage, whether it's herbs, you're using something natural that God has given us, but you're recognizing and trusting that the healing comes from God himself. Right? And we use these things in faith. So this picture, excuse me, of this gentleman, his name is Sebastian Knepp, And he is considered the father of hydrotherapy. He was a Bavarian priest who contracted tuberculosis in 1849. Now, tuberculosis was a disease that was considered uncurable as well. A lot of people would die from it. But he actually cured himself by going to a really icy river every day and taking like ice baths. He would take short ice baths every day, and he found that in doing that, he strengthened his immune system, and he got better. And other people saw that he got better, and they were amazed by that because he should have died. And so they start asking him, like, what happened? What did you do? And he's telling them, I went and I took these icy baths. And he started studying water and sharing that with other people, and he would travel around and teach that. So he's considered the father of hydrotherapy. And he had what he called a 5-pillar philosophy. So this was his approach to the 5 pillars that are necessary for health. The first one was herbal remedies. So it'd be like teas and tinctures and things, herbs for healing. The second was hydrotherapy. The third one is exercise. Fourth one, nutrition. And the fifth one is balance. I always say that's like the most important one. We have to be balanced in everything that we do.
Yes.
But that's a pretty well-rounded approach to the health message for someone who didn't have a health message, right? He includes a lot of different things there. And he has this quote. It says, water contains healing. It is the simplest, cheapest, and if used correctly, the safest remedy. Now in modern times, if you're familiar with Dr. Kellogg and the Battle Creek Sanitarium, he used hydrotherapy there. And at the sanitarium, let's see, it's kind of hard to read on the screen up there. Can you guys read that? Yes. Is it too small? So Dr. John Harvey Kellogg also successfully treated numerous infections and diseases with the use of simple remedies, including observance to the laws of health. And he used water treatments. Individuals traveled from all over the world to receive treatment at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. So there were presidents that had gone there. I believe Amelia Earhart had been there. Ford had gone there. The world at the time knew that if you were going to have a chance at getting better, you would go see Dr. Kellogg at Battle Creek. And I actually recently got a copy. He has a book that he wrote about hydrotherapy. And it's this thick. It's like 1,011, I think it's 1,100, 1,200 pages. Like, it's a really thick book. I was so excited to find it. It was in Australia. Someone shipped it to me. But it's a thick book, and he goes through like all the science behind hydrotherapy, diagrams, pictures of them using it in Battle Creek. And at the time, it was miraculous, the healing that people would get using water therapies. And it used to be taught in universities. So if you went to the hospital, nurses would use hydrotherapy on you. I have another book, it's from Loma Linda. It was from the School of Nursing, and it's all about hydrotherapy. But why is it that you think that we don't use hydrotherapy so much anymore?
They made expensive machines.
So they're not going to make money on it, for one. But also, it's more labor intensive. Right? You have to spend more time with the patient doing a hydrotherapy treatment versus giving them a prescription or a pill. So the nice thing is that hydrotherapy doesn't have all the crazy side effects as a drug does. Now, Ellen White has a lot to say about hydrotherapy as well. She has this quote from Ministry of Healing, page 237. She says, "In health and in sickness, pure water is one of heaven's choicest blessings. Its proper use promotes health. It is the beverage which God provided to quench the thirst of animals and man. Drunk freely, it helps to supply the necessities of the system and assists nature to resist disease. The external application of water is one of the easiest and most satisfactory ways of regulating the circulation of the blood. A cold or a cool bath is an excellent tonic. Warm baths open the pores and aid in the elimination of impurities, and both warm and neutral baths soothe the nerves and equalize the circulation." It's amazing how she knew all that, not having a medical degree and a third grade education, but she was ahead of her time. These were things that God had showed her. But many have never learned by experience the beneficial effects of the proper use of water, and they're afraid of it. Water treatments are not appreciated as they should be, and to apply them skillfully requires work that many are unwilling to perform. but none should feel excuse for ignorance or indifference on this subject. So she viewed it as something that was important that we should all know. There are many ways in which water can be applied to relieve pain and check disease. All should become intelligent in its use in simple home treatments. Mothers especially should know how to care for their families in both health and sickness. Beautiful gifts that God gave us. So how does it work? I have mentioned briefly last night we were going to talk about homeostasis. Does anyone know what homeostasis is? You familiar with that term? Okay, equilibrium. You're saying the body's pH? That's part of it. So basically, homeostasis is your body's goal to preserve itself. Okay, it needs to keep everything in balance, and it regulates. I have on the screen, the definition is any self-regulating process by which biological systems tend to maintain stability while adjusting to conditions that are optimal for survival. The stability attained is actually a dynamic equilibrium in which continuous change occurs, yet relatively uniform conditions prevail. So every moment, our bodies are going through changes. We're adjusting to our environment, we adjust to the food that we eat, whether it's hot out, whether it's cold. We're constantly making little micro adjustments and we're not even aware of it. But the body's ultimate goal is to always preserve health and to sustain itself. So an example of that would be your body temperature control. So normal body temperature, like what's a healthy temperature? Textbook?
98.6.
There you go, 98.6. That's the textbook temperature of a healthy individual. Now it could vary, but that's typically what you hear. It can be affected by a number of factors, such as environmental temperatures, your hormones, and illness. Yet the body undergoes changes to maintain a stable body temperature even when you're in a cold room. So if you're in a cold room, how does your body try to make itself warm?
Shivering.
Okay, you shiver. When you shiver, you generate body heat. You may also develop goosebumps on your skin. And that's your body trying to trap some of the heat inside. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so those are two ways. Now, what about when you have a fever? Is your body still maintaining homeostasis even when you have a fever?
No.
Yes.
Kind of like a trick question, okay? So when a virus is introduced to the body, we may develop symptoms such as a fever, which lets us know that a war is going on inside of our systems. So last week I was sick with the flu, I had a fever. I was talking with Melody this morning, she was sharing she had fevers last week. It's not a fun experience, right? It's not a fun experience. As our body temperature increases though, chemical actions inside the body also increase and become more effective. This way, the immune system is more effective, white blood cells are more active, and the virus can be destroyed. So it's creating an environment that the virus cannot dwell in. Once the virus is destroyed, what happens to our temperatures? It goes back to normal. So even when you have a fever, it's your body maintaining this balance and self-preservation. It recognizes there's a threat. It's elevating your temperature to deal with the threat, and then once that's all taken care of, then it goes back down again. It's amazing how God created us. Last week, when I had 102-degree fever and I'm cold and I'm laying in bed all bundled up, I'm just imagining all my white blood cells like, let's fight! You know, and they're all rallying together, and it's like, hey, they're doing their thing, right? So whenever I have a fever, I try not to fight it. I try to just keep myself warm and let my body do its job. Because sometimes when you try to suppress the fever, then it may take longer to get better. That's not in every case. You know, sometimes you need to check it because the body's lost control in a sense. But generally speaking, even the fever is good for you. The ability of the body to react may be improved by the use of water treatments as it is made to react to heat and cold applications. So we use water in different temperatures that causes changes on a vascular level. So how does it work? That's a little diagram of vasodilation when heat is applied to the skin. You see the blood vessel goes from smaller to wider. It makes the blood vessel bigger. When that happens, more blood is able to flow through the vessel, which helps to bring more nutrients, more white blood cells, whatever's needed to the area. When we apply cold, the opposite happens. And you see the blood vessel gets smaller, right? The cold restricts it. It's called vasoconstriction. When that happens, it pulls blood away from the area, which removes wastes and toxins and things that need to be removed from the body. When you alternate that, the hot and cold, you're effectively creating like a pump that's increasing circulation to flow better. Good things coming in, bad things going out. And it helps to promote healing. Heat has a stimulating effect. So when you apply heat, circulation and metabolic processes are increased, lymph channels increase in size and flow, and the heat can help draw out infection. Cold has what's called a depressing effect, which slows down metabolic processes and circulation. This is a quote from the Loma Linda textbook. It says, to interpret the reflex effect of cutaneous applications, so when you apply heats or cold to the skin, only a few rules need to be considered. As a general rule, the effect produced by the reflex action is the same as in the skin area treated. A long continuous application of cold causes contraction of the muscle and blood vessels, and the activity of the organ is also decreased. Where short cold or alternating hot and cold is made, the effect upon the related organ is that which results from reaction, that is tonic or stimulating, and applications of heat can cause relaxation, increased blood supply, and increased activity. So basically what that's saying is that when you apply something to the skin, it has the same effect on the organs underneath the skin. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but if somebody's having digestive issues and you do fomentations over their abdomen, you're benefiting their stomach. You can do this over someone's kidneys. You can do it over, certain ligaments that are damaged. And whatever you do to the skin, the same effect that you can see when your skin gets red and you can feel the blood vessels changing size, the same thing is taking place to the organs underneath. Interesting, huh? So some of the general benefits of hydrotherapy: it increases circulation, it boosts the immune system to help fight disease, it helps rid the body of toxins, it decreases inflammation, it calms the nerves, and it aids in the healing process of the body. Some points to remember when you're doing hydrotherapy. Number one, always explain the procedure to the individual receiving the treatment before beginning. So you want to be on the same page, so they know what to expect and you've laid out the whole process to them. You always want to communicate. Special precautions are needed when dealing with elderly or children. Why do you think that is?
Sometimes they like feel like the heat sensory. Sometimes they have nerve damage, they can't feel how hot or cold something is.
Okay, so there may be sensitivities to temperature. A lot of times skin may be thinner, and so it's easier to burn someone. Or even their systems aren't going to give as strong of a reaction as you want. And so if they have a weakened system and you're doing a hydrotherapy treatment that's trying to create like this strong effect, then their body may not be able to, and then you can cause more harm than good. So you might want to use more gentle treatments for someone who's older or a child. Number 3, don't use hydrotherapy if you're unsure of underlying medical conditions. That is an important one. Even though hydrotherapy is generally considered safe, you want to know why you're applying it. Extra care is required in individuals with diabetes or impaired sensation. So a lot of times someone with diabetes might have limited sensation in their feet or in their hands, and then you can burn them. So you want to be careful of that. Communicate with the person who's receiving the treatment. You want to keep the room free of drafts, because if they get a chill, then you just undid all the benefits of your treatment. So you want to make sure that they're warm and the treatment is going well. Always keep the head cool. That's a big one. I've seen people who make a lot of mistakes doing hydrotherapy because they forgot to keep the head cool. And then we had, when I was working in Alabama, we had one patient who actually fainted after a hydrotherapy treatment because they got too hot and then they stood up and they just passed out. You always want to make sure you keep the head cool. And be sure to keep the person hydrated. So that's another thing, is when you're doing especially applications of heat and someone's sweating, they're losing fluid and water through their skin. And so you want to make sure that you are replenishing that. And number 9, remember to pray. I did this presentation at a church one time, and I had a woman come up to me afterwards and say, I think your list is backwards. Remember to pray should be the first thing, not the last thing. But the reason why I put it in the last thing is to emphasize the important. Like if you forget all the other points, I want you to remember that you always pray before you start a treatment. Because again, we're trusting God to bring the healing. A little carelessness may undo all the benefits of a treatment. So you want to make sure that you've planned everything out, that you've taken into consideration what you need to, that the room is warm, you keep the patient warm, and you're doing your due diligence to make sure the procedure is followed the way it should be. Okay. Bored yet? Anyone sleepy? Great. Okay, we're going to get into the actual treatment. So you all have handouts. That's the end of the slides. So the first one is a hot foot bath. I think all the papers were given to you in a nice order. And these are things that you can look at, you can take them home, you can review them later, you can practice on your family. We're just going to be doing dry examples today for the sake of time. But hot foot bath. Does somebody want to read that first little paragraph on the top?
This treatment affects the circulation of the entire body. The hair on the feet dilates the blood vessels in the area, drawing blood away from the congested areas of the body in order to relieve headaches.
That's supposed to be long, not lunch.
Pelvic condition. Oh, wow. What?
Lunch congestion in the lunchroom?
Yes. For those of you over 8.
Is the condition for lunch?
Long.
It's a typo. It's supposed to say lungs, not lunch. We're going to go fix that.
Thank you. That's why I said.
It's just checking that we're alert.
There you go. And pelvic congestion. So it's the heat on the feet will dilate blood vessels, which helps to relieve congestion from the other central areas of the body. So each of these handouts are kind of structured the same way. You have a section that says indications. Those are the cases where you would use this for. Contraindications are when you want to be careful or avoid it. We have a little box for the equipment needed, points to consider, and then it's the steps for the procedure. So indications. The first one, what does it say? Headache. Believe it or not, even if you have a headache and you don't necessarily want to go through the whole treatment, just soak your feet in some hot water and put some ice on your head. And it helps the headache. And you can go as extreme with the same concept of heat and cold. I've known of individuals who deal with migraines and they'll fill up the bathtub really nice and hot and they'll soak in the bathtub up to their neck and then make their head cool, and it helps to relieve their migraines. So it's that concept of relieving the congestion. High blood pressure. I just used this last week. I had someone call me up. Their blood pressure was really high. They're on 2 different blood pressure medications and it's still high and they didn't know what to do. I said, oh, you can come by the office, and I gave her a hot foot bath and I gave her a massage afterwards. And just in the hour she was in my office, her blood pressure came down like 14 points and she was feeling better. So this is a really good one that can be used for high blood pressure as well. I will make the little caveat that if your blood pressure is very high, like up at the range, I showed a chart last night of what's dangerous levels, go to a doctor and get checked because that is important, and sometimes you need a medication to intervene to help bring you to a safe level while you make lifestyle changes to bring it down. But I don't advocate for being in a dangerous zone and then say, well, I'm gonna drink a lemon juice and trust it's going to be better, right? Because one of the things with natural remedies is that when you use them, sometimes it takes longer time to make changes because you're dealing with the root problem. And there are some health cases that you're in a critical area and you need to deal with it now. So I do recommend individuals with like high blood pressure, if your doctor gives you a prescription, take it. But be working on lifestyle changes also so that you can wean off of it. But this does work for blood pressure, for congestion in the chest, For pelvic congestion or cramps, so ladies who have difficult menstrual cycles and you're very crampy, I've used this for individuals to help to alleviate that pain. It helps to shorten a cold or a flu, can help relieve aches and pains, and increase white blood cell activity. So it's beneficial for a lot of things, right? Yep. You want to be careful using it again in diabetes or in any condition where the sensation is impaired. Points to consider: you want to avoid water temperatures that are over 102 degrees. Most of you may not have a water thermometer at home, so you can kind of test it with like the inside of your wrist or your elbow, like you would a baby bottle, just to make sure that it doesn't feel like it's burning. And then you're communicating with the person as well for their heat tolerances. Okay. All right, procedure. We'll come back to one of the points to consider as we go through procedure. Someone read what is the first two steps.
So number 1,
Read number 1 and number 2.
drape a blanket over a chair, then place a sheet over the blanket. Number 2, have a basin with warm water ready on floor in front of the chair. Note, if the thermometer is available, begin water around 103 to 104 degrees. If thermometer is not available, test with wrist or elbow to make sure it's warm enough.
Okay, I was going to set this up before we started, but then I was like, no, I'm going to show you guys how you set it. So we have a chair here. I'm just going to put a little towel on the floor. We're going to protect our floor from the water. So you have a blanket. This is really simple. We take the blanket, we kind of set it so that the bottom of it is like resting on the ground, and then we just drape it over the chair. Just like that. And then we do the same thing with a sheet. So again, we take the sheet, we hold it the long way, and we do the same thing where we just drape it over. Make sense so far?
Yes.
That wasn't too hard.
If you want to protect
And
the
then
chair,
you're going to
yeah.
use a basin. So this is you're going to use your imagination. It's filled with some nice water. Okay, it's nice and warm. Now I like to use this as examples. This is a mop bucket I got from Target. Okay, this is home hydrotherapy, so you can use whatever you have on hand. I taught a class at a church where we actually did real treatments, and I told everyone what supplies to bring, and we were practicing the real thing. And a gentleman showed up with a bucket, an empty bucket of compounds. You know, those construction buckets? Yeah. And I was like, that's brilliant. So basically, you want something that you can set your feet into. The deeper it is, the better effect you're going to have. So I like this because you can put your feet in, and it's going to go up your ankles and like part way up your calf. So this is filled with water, and we have that sitting in front of the chair. Okay. What is the next step? Someone read number 3 and number 4.
Have individuals sit in chair with their feet in the basin, wrapping them completely first with the sheet, then the blanket. Note to make sure foot basin is also wrapped within both blanket and sheet. If needed, number 4, tuck a hand towel around the neck to ensure no loss of heat.
Okay. So do I have a volunteer who wants to come sit on the seats?
Michael! I'll go if nobody wants to.
Okay, we got Melody volunteer.
Go, Michael.
Melody.
Like it.
You want to?
You come.
Hey. Oh,
I'll go.
Okay.
Can I put my heels in too?
No.
You want to?
I don't want
I can
to
get you some water.
You wash them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have your individual sitting in the chair. So I would say, how's the temperature? So you're starting at a temperature that's not, it's warm, but it's not burning hot, okay? So we take the sheets, we're gonna wrap it over her shoulders, and I'm gonna wrap it around the basin as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna tuck it on this side.
If we're gonna get a haircut.
And then we do the same going this way. There you go. We have the same hairline. See that? And then you do the same thing with the blanket.
Wow.
Lazarus, come out. We're mummifying Nelly.
Even without water, it's already water.
No, that's a fair question. No, you can have clothes on. You can have clothes.
Thanks.
You are likely to sweat as you do the treatment. There you go.
I feel like a baby.
She's all wrapped up. Now, if you have gaps around the neck, like in this case, she's nice and snug. But if there were gaps around the neck, you would take a hand towel and you would tuck it around to trap heat inside. No, just a dry one. Just to trap the heat inside. That's just as like a seal. Now, as she starts to get hot, you're going to have a basin nearby. So this is my basin of cold water. Can you guys see the ice cubes in there? Okay.
Wow.
And you would have a washcloth that you would wring out and then you would put on her head to keep her cold. You look so nice.
I feel so healthy right now.
Okay. All right, so number 5. Someone read number 5.
Periodically add hot water from kettle to gradually raise the water in the basin to a temperature of about 110 degrees. Being sure to stir water with hand and take precautions not to burn the feet of the person receiving the treatment.
Okay, so I put like degrees on the paper here, but again, if you don't have a water thermometer, like you can be testing it yourself and you can be asking the individual. So somewhere nearby, you're going to have a pot, you're going to have a kettle, something on the stove where you're boiling hot water. And as this goes on, you're going to be able to add water as she's able to tolerate it to make it hotter. Okay? So when it comes time to add water, I would lift up the blankets, and then you can either have the person remove their feet completely. What I tend to do is I would tell her to put one foot on top of the other. Okay? And then I would put my hand in between, and I would pour in some hot water and use my hand to like stir it around. That way my hand is there as a barrier between the hot water I'm pouring and her feet, and I'm able to sense myself what the temperature of the water is. While also asking, how does that feel? You know, is that hot enough? Can you take any more? And so you would add a little bit, mix it around, and then cover back up again. And then she'll start getting, some people it takes longer for them to sweat. They just kind of feel nice and warm and toasty. Some people start sweating really quickly. So again, you're checking to make sure they're not overheated. You're keeping their head warm. You're offering them a cup of water with a straw for them to be able to drink and stay hydrated. Okay.
It's all pretending.
We're all pretend. You're going to continue this process for about 15 to 20 minutes. And again, this is depending on what you're dealing with. If it's a cold, or flu or congestion, then, 15 to 20 minutes is fine. I had a lady that I did this for menstrual cramps, and she stayed in there for like an hour, I think, or an hour and a half. It was quite a while. And just the heat, was soothing to her, and it's okay to go longer. In her case, I didn't make the water as hot because she's in there for a more prolonged amount of time. But it depends on how strong and how mild you're doing the treatment, if that makes sense. All right. Someone read number 8. Yes.
To conclude treatment, have individual raise feet above the basin of water. You quickly pour the remaining cold water over feet to close blood vessels. Note, do not let the individual place feet back in warm water.
Yes, so when you do hydrotherapy treatment, you're always ending on cold. The only time that you're not following that rule is if you're working with someone with rheumatoid arthritis, where cold is going to trigger more pain than you want to. But for the most part, when you finish the treatment, you want to seal off the pores, kind of close them back up again, you end on cold. And then for number 9, depending on how much sweating occurred depends on how much the person's going to have to rest and how much cold you apply. So if they really sweat, then you want to close off the pores to their whole body, which you can do with cold friction or have them take a cool shower. But you always want them to rest afterwards as well. So you want to rest for 20 to 30 minutes. If it was a more vigorous treatment, then you can actually wrap them up and let them continue sweating for an hour before cooling them off. But to end the treatment, so we have the basin of ice water here. I would tell her to lift her feet up. Oh, I'm going to take the blanket away. And she'd be holding her feet. I'd move the basin so that it's under, and I would take the cold. It's 1, 2, 3. And then she would go, ah! And you would take the basin away. She could put her feet down. You would dry her off. And that would conclude the treatment.
I'd be a fan now.
It's so cold.
Okay. And then she's going to feel all good. And then you can go ahead
Remove the blanket.
and set her free.
Watch out, the mommy's getting out.
Peruvian mummy. Those are the worst.
Hey!
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but what about the steam room?
That's the next one.
Okay. Yeah,
That's the next one. So yes, it's jumping. But any questions about what we just heard?
When you finish with the cold water, how cold is it? Do you actually have like ice in the water too, or how cold can the
So,
water be?
living here in New England, our tap water gets pretty cold. So you could get away just using water from the tap versus, when I was living in Georgia and Alabama and they're giving you a cold shower and it feels beautiful in the middle of summer, right? You want to add some ice to it. But it's not going to hurt if you add ice and make it colder too.
Okay.
It depends. And you can monitor for example, if you're sweating and I'm using a washcloth to put cold on your head, then as I'm re-wetting that washcloth, the water might be warming up. So I might add ice to it to help make sure that it stays nice and cold, and you can judge by whether the ice is melting or not. But you want to keep it cool. And then if you have to so it says here that you might want to use a cold mitt and friction. I know one of those handouts, I wasn't going over it today. But that's basically when you take a hand towel and you dip it in the cold water and then you kind of like rub over their body, over their arms, their legs, and it's just that coldness to seal off the pores. You would do that if someone was like too weak to go take a cool shower or something, like if they're very feverish and unsteady on their feet and you don't want them walking around. You can do it yourself with a cold towel and kind of rub them off. Make sense? Okay, so that's the hot foot bath.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you leave by yourself like my case, I'm thinking about, I want to do hydrotherapy, but is there any risk if I have to open it and do it myself because there's some, airflow that may get into it?
So something like this, like to do it like we just demonstrated, would be kind of hard to do on yourself because you're like wrapping yourself up, and then how do you get out to get water and things? So you would just do like a modified version or as best as you could. So maybe you're not adding a bunch of hot water, you just got a hot bucket, you got your feet, and you've kind of wrapped a blanket around yourself. And that's okay. You can have water or something nearby that you can reach out and take. I've even told individuals to put hot water in your bathtub and sit on the edge of the tub, with something around you if you have a headache or things. You kind of modify it a little bit and you do the best that you can do. And again, trust that God gives the benefits. But I've had individuals who even do the bathtub, just sitting on the edge of the bathtub. But the concept is to make sure your feet are hot and make sure your head is cool. So that's the principle that we're going by. So the next one is the Russian steam bath. So this one is similar in setup to the hot foot bath. Does somebody want to read that top paragraph? And hopefully there's no typos in it.
While similar in setup to a a hot foot bath, a Russian steam bath is more intense. During this procedure, the body is surrounded with humid air and produces sweating. Since heat is not lost by evaporation, body temperature may increase depending on duration of treatment. A Russian steam bath increases white blood cells metabolism, circulation, and assists in detox.
Okay. So this is something that you can use in rheumatoid arthritis for someone with low blood pressure and you're trying to bring their pressure up, and during a cold and flu as well. So this is like a detox treatment as well if you're just looking to be able to sweat off some toxins. A lot of people like to use it for that actually. It's kind of like a steam room. But this is really good for dealing with colds and flus also. And again, you're going to be careful in conditions where circulation and sensation is impaired. Emaciation, so if somebody's like all bones and they don't have much fat on them, then you could burn them, so you want to be careful with that. Advanced arteriosclerosis, if you have blockages in your arteries, you want to be careful because you are putting like an extra strain, you know, your heart rate's going to go up. And in cases of high blood pressure, you want to avoid it. Because this is the more intense sister to the hot foot bath. So the setup is similar. Let me grab this first. I have, as an example, a hot plate and a kettle. So this is one way that you can do it. You can have an electric kettle that you just plug in, but this is going to go underneath the chair that the person is sitting on. Now, this chair, again, these are dry runs, but if we were doing real treatments, I would not be able to use this chair. Why not? Fireproof?
You will burn yourself with the heat.
It's a metal chair. Okay, and it's gonna hurt if you have steam. You're heating it up.
So what kind of chair?
Wooden chair. If you look under the equipment needed,
Oh.
you'll notice that the word wooden is italicized and underlined, right? So yes, you would have a wooden chair. Another thing to consider is, you notice, like I put the kettle under the chair. If you can see it, which way is the kettle pointing?
Towards you.
It's pointing that way, right? You don't want it pointing towards the person's legs. Because that's going to hurt too. So those are things you need to consider. You also have a basin in the front full of hot water. And it's the same concept. You have someone would sit on the chair, you have your blanket and your sheet, except after they sit on the chair, you're going to wrap it around them in the bucket this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say I'll make you come back and do it again. But that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So you sit on the chair, you wrap it around this way, and it's the same thing. You might need to add a hand towel around the neck if there's any gaps, but you would have the person sit there. You would make sure that the kettle has water in it and it's running, and you're also still checking the temperature of the basin and adding hot water as needed. This one, the person will get hotter and sweat more, so definitely make sure you have water on hand with a straw for them to drink, and that you have cold water for their head. Okay? Now the procedure is basically the same. The same thing. To number 8 talks about concluding the treatment, where you do the same thing. You have the person lift their feet up and then you dump the cold water on it. You can follow it with the cold mitten friction, which is again using a hand towel with cold water, or to have them take a cool shower. And then you allow the person to rest for at least 30 minutes after the treatment. Okay. If you're using this to treat someone and they're dealing with a flu or a cold, you're not going to have to convince them to go rest for half an hour. They're going to be tired. You know, you've told the body to work and to do something, and when you go to rest, it's a really important step that some people think is not as important. But that's when you're allowing your body to do what you've just commanded it to do. And it goes about doing its healing process. Any questions on that?
Cold?
Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask you if you can use a bathtub in this setup, as a substitute. Because if you have the water running and you don't have the vent on, there can be a lot of steam.
Yeah, it'll get steamy, but it probably won't be as intense as you're wrapped up in a blanket. It's a more confined space, and you have the kettle right under you. So Pardon?
Confined spaces need permits.
I didn't hear that.
Taylor.
No, I said confined spaces need permits.
Oh. No.
I don't
So,
know if we get it. I don't get it.
Like for work, like certain places, they have locks that you have assigned as confined space, permit confined space.
well, this one you don't have
I'm sorry.
But because it's a smaller area, you're actually going to get more heat doing it this way than versus like the whole bathroom filling up with steam.
Oh, and another question. Like there's a steam room at some gyms.
Mhm.
It's the same concept, right?
Yes, it's the same similar concept.
Because I've been to this. I think they have a sauna room and a steam room at the YMCA. But they also have like a pipe with cold water. So I was wondering like.
Well, the cold water is probably to make sure you're keeping yourself cool.
Oh.
So I've been in a Russian steam room where you sit in the room, it's like all tiled and it just fills up with steam. I don't tolerate heat very well. So I definitely had a basin of cold water and then just like covered my whole face with a rag so I felt like I could breathe. But you want to make sure that when you're in a room like that you're keeping yourself hydrated and you're keeping yourself cool. Because if you don't, you can pass out.
Oh wow.
Like you can, and that's what I'm saying is I've had cases. Wasn't my patient personally, but one of my coworkers was doing a contrast shower on an individual where the steam was like all trapped inside the shower curtain. The way the place was designed, you were supposed to leave the shower curtain open slightly on the top to let steam out, and my coworker had forgotten to do that. And with all the steam and the heat, the lady came out of the treatment and just fell like face down on the floor. You don't want to get overheated in treatment. So if you have cold water available to you, put it on your head.
The Russians use a leaf.
Pardon?
The Russians use a leaf when they're in a steam room.
Yeah?
That's kind of their tradition.
It's like a fan, like to cool.
No, what they do is they lie on their back, and they have a wooden, and during World War II, they take this leaf and then slap their back with it.
Huh.
Yeah, it's one of the ways of taking the toxin out. It opens up the pores. But
Interesting.
So when they sit together, I mean, if you watch some of the Russian movies and things like that, or culture movies, you'll see them using a leaf on their back. The guys do it together, the girls do it together. It's the same thing for both. They use a
Interesting. I'll
leaf
have to
and they
look
hit
that
the
up.
back. That's-
What's a cold mitten friction?
So the cold mitten friction is, I'll give you back that paper. You can make copies of it for everybody later. But we have a handout for that one. But basically, you have a cold basin of water. You have a hand towel. You're soaking it in the cold water and wringing it out, and then you're using it to like add friction to someone's arm, to someone's leg, and you would start using that to. It's a way of applying cold water. And you're doing it by the method of friction. That's why it's called cold mitten friction. And it's called cold mitten because some people actually make like mittens out of towels that they can put their hands in and do it that way. There's a way that you can do where you kind of like wrap it around your hand and make like a little glove. Works better with a washcloth than a hand towel. But you do it that way. One of the classes that I taught, a woman raised her hand and she's like, what if I use socks? And I'm like, that's a good idea. Like, that could work. It's creative. You're putting your hands in the socks. But it's applying it to cold water and adding friction. So I'll show it a little bit, dry show it, when we talk about fomentations at the end because you use it then also.
I have a question. Do we have to start, let's say, from the right and finish to the left, or does it make any difference either or?
If you're doing it for the whole body, you're starting on the extremities and working towards the heart. So you could start on the feet and like go up the legs, start from the hands and go up towards the shoulders, and you can do chest and back.
But even if I start like from the feet, do I have to start with the right one first?
No.
Or doesn't matter?
No, it's just distance coming closer. It doesn't matter which side.
Oh, I have one more question.
Yes.
So I have rheumatoid arthritis, but so you were saying not to do the cold part in any part, or like a cooler temperature, or like.
Say that again?
I have rheumatoid arthritis, so you were saying the cold part. Is it just that it's too cold, or with a cooler temperature, or don't do the cold part?
So it depends on the individual and your tolerance. So you might want to not go as cold, because typically in individuals with rheumatoid arthritis, especially like cold weather, cold air, it causes flare-ups. So you might want to do like a more mild cold, but it's more so that you're not ending the treatment on cold. So you can, the cold mitt and friction would probably be better than taking like a whole cold shower. But in cases like this next one, we're going to talk about the contrast baths, where you're alternating hot and cold. You're going to end on hot instead of cold. So you can still use the cold, but you're ending on hot. It's like the exception to the rule. Any other questions on Russian steam before we go to contrast baths? Make sense so far?
Yeah.
All right. And this is, it's one of those things that you pray about, and you understand like the principles of what you're trying to achieve, and you can get creative in different ways to do it. I've heard stories of missionaries, overseas giving baths, fever baths, by taking a refrigerator, an old broken refrigerator, and filling it up with water, like a tub, and using that as a bathtub to do a hydrotherapy treatment. Or I heard a story of someone who had gone on a mission trip to Africa, and they ended up digging a hole outside, putting a tarp in it, filling it with water, and just letting it sit there all day. And then by the end of the day, it was warm enough to do like a hot bath in the hole that they had dug. So you get creative, and God blesses the efforts. Hey, contrast baths. Does someone want to read that top paragraph?
When heat is applied to the body, blood vessels dilate or expand, allowing for an increase of blood flow to that area. When cold is applied, blood vessels constrict or close, sending blood out of the area and removing cellular waste products from the area. The alternation of both hot and cold increases circulation and nutrients to a certain area, while at the same time removing waste and reducing inflammation.
Okay, so it's kind of like what we were talking about in the presentation, where there's the pictures of the blood vessels, and they get wider when heat is applied and smaller when cold is applied. So that's basically what we're talking about here. So indications, when would you use this? Sprains and strains. Yeah, you can use it in edema, poor blood circulation to help boost the immune system, and again to shorten cold or flu in the form of a shower. So this is the same, again, everything with hydrotherapy is going based off the same principles. And so in this case, we're applying hot and cold. You're doing it either in a local area or you're doing it to the whole body. If you want the whole body, then you're doing it in the form of a shower. So when I had the flu last week, the first day, as soon as I knew I was getting sick, I went and I gave myself a contrast shower, alternating hot and cold. You can do this locally, like I have these 2 bins here, and these are just like little storage boxes. You can use dish pans, anything that fits, whether it's your foot, your arm. I have issues with my wrist. Sometimes I get like a tendonitis in this arm. I've broken this arm twice because I was a very adventurous child growing up. And I also did a lot of fine skills. So I used to love to knit and to crochet. I'm a very good typist. I did a lot of typing. And all of those things causes wear, on your wrist. So every now and then my wrist acts up, it hurts. And this is something that I do that helps it heal faster and helps feel better. Okay, so again, the same points to consider is you're going to be careful if someone has sensitivity to temperatures. Basically, if you go through the procedure, it says you place the area to be treated in hot water for how many minutes?
3 to 5.
3 to 5 minutes. And then you remove from the hot water and you place in cold water for how long?
30 seconds.
30 seconds to a minute. Then you remove from the cold water and you go back to the hot water for another 3 to 5 minutes, and you repeat the process how many times?
5.
At least 5 times, making sure to end in cold water except for the rheumatoid arthritis, and then you dry the area thoroughly. So it's pretty straightforward. You have a basin of hot water. Again, you're going to have a kettle nearby that you can be adding hot water to. and then you can have ice in the cold water if it's not cold enough. So in my case, where my arm would bother me, I would fill it up with hot water and I would set my arm in there. I'd have a timer on my phone for 3 minutes. And then after 3 minutes, I'd come, I'm in the cold water for 30 seconds. While I'm in the cold, I can add a little bit of extra hot to the heat one. You go back again and you alternate that 5 times. That's simple, right? If it's your ankle, you know, you're doing it with your foot. Like I said, if you're in the shower, then you're just turning the knob between hot and cold. I was so proud of myself when I did a contrast shower last week because I like my hot showers. And I managed to get it all the way to like as cold as it goes. And I'm like, woo! But I challenge you to like go home and to try to do that, even if it's ending a shower, like your daily shower, you end it on cold water. Just that one bit of cold is helping to strengthen your immunity and helps protect you against the colds and flus that go around this time of year. And if you've done it, then you can even feel this vasodilation and vasoconstriction happen in your skin. So that's one thing, is you alternate hot and cold. When you put the hot on, it's like you can feel your skin like relax, and you put the cold and you feel like the tingly, like it all tightens up. And it actually feels kind of good, but it's amazing that you can feel all of those cells going through those changes. Any questions on that? No questions on that?
Well, I guess how cold does a shower have to get? As cold as it goes?
So you want to be creating a contrast. So if it's hot enough and cold enough and the degrees are different enough that you can feel that change in your skin, then you're at a good enough temperature. You know, some people are going to be able to tolerate more hot, some are be able to tolerate more cold. When you do it, especially like if you're in the shower, the goal is to, every time you go back to the heat, try to go a little bit hotter. And when you go to the cold, try to go a little bit colder. And you find that you actually get used to it in a way. I know for me, when I do it, then by the time I'm so hot, I'm actually looking forward to the cold. Because you warm up doing it and it gets really hot, and then the cold ends up feeling relaxing, like a relief.
Do you do that to your head as well? I've done the contrast shower, but I don't never do my head.
Oh, I do my head too.
Do your head too? Oh.
I do all of it. I find that if I'm doing a contrast shower and I'm not including like wetting my head, then it's harder for me to tolerate it.
Oh.
For me personally, I find if I let the cold water hit my head, then I accept it better. I don't know why, maybe it's a psychological thing, but it helps.
I saw a video recently on that.
Yeah?
Some Asian guy was explaining that if you're gonna if you're gonna have to use colder water to bathe with, because you don't have a facility or something, he said start off with some water on the center of the top of your head. That cold water that hits your head kind of just, I guess, prepares your whole body for the cooler water.
There you go. I've got someone to back me up. It's just something I've always done it. It makes it easier to tolerate. And then also, you're not standing in the same place all the time. So, you know, you're kind of rotating yourself like a rotisserie chicken. Make sure you're well done on all sides. Right? And a vegan one. And then, you know, it helps too, like as the cold water is like hitting you, that you kind of like rub your skin too, and that helps to make you tolerate it better also. But I challenge you all to try it. To go home and give yourself a contrast shower.
Tonight, everyone, tonight.
Yeah.
There you go. We can report back tomorrow on how it went. Okay, any other questions on contrast baths? No more questions. All right, let's move on to fomentations. This is the last one we'll talk about today. So what is a fomentation? Someone read that top paragraph.
Fomentation is a hot moist cloth applied to a body part in order to relieve pain, dilate blood vessels, increase circulation, and increase white blood cells. The application of heat is generally followed by a brief application of cold. This is also a good treatment for congestion caused by colds and flus.
Okay, so basically, again, we're following the same principles. If you want to do hot and cold and increase circulation to your lungs because you're sick and you're very congested, it's not going to be very easy for me to isolate just this area to soak it in a bin, right? So you use fomentations for the same principle where you have the hot, and this is a fomentation. This is a professional fomentation that I brought. This is what I use with my clients. But you can use towels as well. And so the idea is that you're making it hot and you're applying heat to the area, and then you have another hand towel that's cold that you're applying to the area for the 30 seconds. And you're doing the same time. So 3 to 5 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold. Okay, so for the indications, it helps with chest congestion from colds and flus. It's good for bronchitis and pneumonia if you're doing it to the chest. It improves function and healing of internal organs. It can relieve muscle tension. It can relieve pain and inflammation in muscles and joints, back injuries, arthritis, and can also help increase white blood cells. I had a lady that I worked with who had cancer, bone cancer, which was very painful. And she had issues in her hip where she's having a lot of pain one night. She couldn't sleep. And we did a fomentation treatment on her. And we kept it going past the 5 changes. We did it for a couple hours of just alternating the hot and cold for her. And it relieved her pain where she was able to have a full night's sleep that night. So it's helps with inflammation and pain also. Contraindications, you're not going to do it on paralyzed parts of the body. You're not going to do it on someone unconscious. Edema, or if someone has stomach ulcers. That's an important one. If someone has stomach ulcers and you're doing something like this to their abdomen, because you're increasing circulation, you can increase bleeding and issues in the area. So again, you want to know what underlying issues you're working with. It's important. Points to consider: use extreme caution, again, in cases with poor circulation. Add extra towels as a barrier on individuals where bones lie close to the surface of the skin. I've done fomentations on a woman who had cancer, who needed, like, if you take a towel and fold it like this, it's like 3 layers. She needed 10 layers between the fomentation and her skin because she was so frail, and it would burn her. So you want to be careful. You're communicating with the person to make sure that it's not too hot. Even be checking with your hand and kind of lifting to see how red the skin is, because sometimes they won't tell you or they won't recognize how hot it is. So you want to be mindful of that. You change fomentations quickly and keep the body covered to avoid chilling. You communicate with the individual to make sure they don't burn. This is an important point, that you make sure the area is dry before reapplying the fomentation. If you don't dry the skin off before putting the next hot one on, you can burn them. So that's an important thing to remember. So on the second page, there's 3 different methods for heating up fomentations. There's the boiling water method. That is effective, but it's hard. I've done that before. It entails taking a towel, like twisting it up. You twist the ends and you dip it in a pot of boiling water, and then pulling it to wring it out. It's hard to do because you can get water everywhere. You don't want to burn yourself. So if you don't have any other way of heating them, you can do it that way. Just be very careful. The second one is using a canning kettle. So when you can steam towels, that is actually my favorite way of heating, is with steam, because it seems to hold the steam the longest and they stay hottest the longest. But for the easiest method that is also still effective is the microwave method. Does everyone here have a microwave?
Everybody.
Yeah?
Everybody has one.
I don't have one. I bought a microwave specifically for fomentation.
Really?
My house didn't have one. But it's convenient. But most people have a microwave. So if you were to make, let's say you were going to use this towel and turn it into a fomentation, you would take it, you would wet it in the sink, you would wring it out so it's not dripping wet, but it's not dry either.
Right.
You would take it and you would roll it up, and you would put it in a plastic bag. So you guys still have plastic bags here in Massachusetts, right? They banned them in Connecticut. So if you go to the grocery store in Connecticut, you don't get plastic bags.
Same for us.
Yeah, we don't.
No, did they ban it here too now?
Yes.
In some areas. Not all Massachusetts, but some areas.
Okay. All right.
We were banned and it's going back in effect in Massachusetts
Yeah.
also.
Okay.
Eventually, we'll get there.
Well, you can save a few of those bags because they're helpful for this, but you could use other plastic bags as well. But you would take your towel, you put it inside the shopping bag or whatever, you would tie it, and then you would put it in the microwave for 4 to 5 minutes.
With a plastic bag?
Yes.
Plastic bag.
So it doesn't melt, surprisingly enough, and it helps to trap the steam inside so that the towel gets hotter. You know, be mindful when you take it out, you know, the bag itself and everything is hot. You know, so you want to be careful.
5 minutes enough.
4 to 5 minutes.
45. That's a lot.
4 to 5.
Not 45.
Four.
Yeah.
4 to 5, not 45.
That makes sense.
Thank you for that clarification. I misunderstood. 4 to 5 minutes. Okay? Every microwave is different. You might find that 3 minutes makes it really hot. You might find you need 6 minutes. I find 4 to 5 tends to work pretty well. So you would take it out of the microwave, and you would have another towel waiting by. Let's see if this works. And when you took this out of the microwave, you would unroll it. So this size is a good fomentation, and you would want to wrap it up inside of another towel to help try to keep it warm. So what I have, these are the fomentations that I use, and I wrap them up in this wool. This is actually a blanket from the Army store. It's like a military blanket that I took and I cut up into nice fomentation covers. So I would have, might be easier for you to see versus the white towels. But I would have this was wrapped up in my bag, it was microwaved, I take it out and then I can just lay it on the wool and fold it up. And you have a fomentation. When you're moving fomentations from one room to another, I like to put them in like one of these little bins. So I'll even take another wool or another towel and I'll put it inside the bin so then I can put my fomentation in and make sure it stays nice and warm until it's ready to go on the person that I'm doing it with, because you want to keep the heat in as long as possible. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Does somebody want to come lay on the bed as like a
Michael.
demonstration? Where's Michael?
Johnny.
Johnny or Michael?
Oh, Michael.
Hey, hold on there.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I think I have a towel warmer. I've never used it before. But would that be warm enough?
I'm not sure. How warm does it get?
I don't know. I never used it.
It depends how warm it gets. So when you do this method, and when you take the towels out, they're too hot to touch. Like you'll burn yourself touching them. So I'm gonna guess that a towel warmer is not gonna warm it enough.
Oh yeah.
It's more just like it feels good to put on. But when you take the towels out of the microwave, like you use an oven mitt or tongs or something to get it. I've done it enough that I just grab the bag by like the tips and do it quick. I don't burn myself too much, but be careful with it. You want to come lay down? You're Michael? Nice to meet you. Which do you prefer? Okay. Here you go. So let's see, what is your ailments that you have today? You don't have any ailment, but you're going to get a fomentation treatment? You guess. How old are you? 10. Nice. All right, let's say you have congestion, you got a cold or a flu, and your chest is all stuffy. Trying not to knock over the piano. So I'm going to put this over you. So you would have a towel. I think it's okay. Are you just pulling it out a little bit? Thank you. So if you go through the procedure, let's say, you know, we already have our fomentation already and everything. You're covering the person, you know, I'm leaving him uncovered at the moment just so you can see, but he has a blanket and a sheet on. You have a towel that's layering between him and the fomentation. So I usually like to start with like a trifold, like where you have 3 layers of towel until I find out what the person's tolerance is. So see if I fold it that way, there's 3 layers. Some people say that that's too much, and then you can go down to just 2 layers, but it depends on the person. So he would have that to protect him. I would come in with my fomentation, and I would lay that over his chest because he's congested and we're treating that. And then I like to usually cover it with an extra towel just to kind of help trap the heat inside also. And then you would cover them up. And how long does it stay like that for? 3 to 5 minutes. You okay? See that we would cover him up. There you go. Have a good night. Okay, so you have that going for 3 to 5 minutes. While that's happening, space there, you have a basin of cold water, and that has a hand towel in it. Because remember, we got to do cold in between. When I have one fomentation on, I usually go and I prepare the next one. So remember, we're doing multiple changes, 5 changes. So I put it on. That's going to be staying there for 3 to 5 minutes. I can go to the microwave, put the next one in, and then by the time it's ready to switch, the other one will be ready. Make sense?
So since you need to do 5 changes, so you would use 5 different ones or just warm the one that you take off after? How do you?
I usually rewarm the ones I take off. You could do more of them, but you're going to have more laundry and things to clean up later. So I find it works that if I heat up the one I just took off, usually it's a pretty good cycle.
How about if I the third one, I think I'm going to be knocked out.
So after that's on for 3 to 5 minutes, what comes next?
Change.
You change it, but before you put a new hot one on, you're putting colds, right?
Change.
So I want to show you. You comfy? Good. So say we would take this fomentation off. We set it to the side. We have our ice water here that we've gone and we've wrung it out. What I like to do, that's an easy way of, yes, this is wool. When I'm changing from a fomentation to cold, you want to keep the person covered and comfortable. You're keeping them modest. You're avoiding them from getting chilled. So I'll take the cold one and I'll match the corners to the corners of the towel that I'm taking off, so that I just flip it. And then they've got the cold. So now when I'm referring to cold mitt and friction, you have the cold here. It's okay if I touch you? And you would take it and you would like shake, 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 and you would do that for 30 seconds. That's what the cold mitt and friction is, just doing it all the way. Yes, you repeat. So then after that, you have. So what was the important step after the cold, before you put the next heat one?
The cold towel on their head.
Yes, if they're hot, you're keeping their head cold. But before I put the next heat one, yes.
So they don't burn.
So I have a towel or something to dry with. You're matching the corners and flipping it over. This goes back in the cold. You dry them off. And then you can come back with your barrier to help keep them warm. Again, just flipping it. And then you're putting the new fomentation on. And then your 3 to 5 minutes starts all over again. Comfy? Feeling better already, right? Your congestion's going away? You can breathe good? Wonderful. Any questions on that?
How many times? 3 to 4?
5.
5 times.
So you're going to do at least 5 times. And remember, you're going to end on cold. So when it comes time for this to come off, again, we remove this, we take off the fomentation, we've got our cold one.
Measure it
Same
out.
thing, corner to corner.
Nice.
You do cold. Shake, 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 for 30 seconds. You would dry him off. So we come with the dry one and we dry him off. And then that would be the end of his treatment after you did that 5 times.
And now you can take a nap.
And then you rest. You take a nap. You have sweet dreams. Any questions?
That's awesome.
Does that make sense? Does it seem doable?
Is it necessary to remove the clothes or the t-shirt or the man's t-shirt or the...
Yes, you're doing it on the skin.
Okay.
It's most effective if you do it on the skin. That's why when you do the towels, like you're making sure to keep the person covered and comfortable and they're not getting drafts or anything. Now I did have a woman once when I was living down south that I was supposed to do this for, and she didn't want to remove any of her clothes, not even her socks. She wanted to do the whole thing with her clothes on. I'm like, you're gonna get really wet. And you know, she insisted, she was adamant, and so I'm like, okay, like I respect that, and I did do the treatment anyways through her clothes, but I had told her, like, you know, you need to go change, like, right now, because you don't want them to get drafted and sick. So that's what I would be concerned about, but
Or because they wouldn't get fully dry if the clothes get wet.
yeah, so at the end of the treatment, I told her, like, go change, like, right now. Like, don't do anything else. You need to take all those wet clothes off, dry off, but that was like her comfort level. So, now the other thing that I wanted to show you, can I use you still? One more thing, come with. You're so good.
Enjoy. It's not every day you come to church you get to lie down.
I know. You get to come to church and sleep. So I want to show you guys one other thing. I'm going to go back to the hot foot bath because it's possible to do a hot foot bath when someone's in bed. So I was going to show you guys that. I'm going to pull the sheet off for a moment. You can stay there. So if you have someone they're really sick or really weak, you know, they can't get out of bed. When COVID was going around, one of the elders from another church was really, really sick. He wasn't doing well. His wife called me up and was saying, like, hey, you know, my husband's really sick, his fever's really high, I'm really concerned, what can I do? So we actually called on Zoom, and I demonstrated how to do a hot foot bath on one of my family members, and everything that I did, the wife was doing to her husband, and they called me up a few days later, and they're like, that night his fever broke. And now every time I see him, if he hears me talk about hydrotherapy, he's raising his hands, you know, that it was a benefit to him.
Yeah.
And he says that when we were doing it, he's like, oh, I never sweat. I don't sweat. You know, and that night he says, I never sweat so much in my life. It was just what he needed to help push him over, you know, to help alleviate the congestion, get his blood flowing, and kind of pushed him towards recovery. So if you were going to do a hot foot bath on someone in the bed, you would take a basin like that one may be too big and a little harder to use. You might end up needing something smaller. Can you bend your knees for me? I'm going to have you put your feet in this basin. There you go. So you would put the basin in the bed itself, and you would use like a rolled up towel or something to put on the bottom to help keep it somewhat elevated. Bend your knees a little more for me, honey. There you go. You don't want it tipping all over the bed. And then you would cover the person up, and they're all warmed up. See, this is the same effect as them being wrapped in the blanket in the chair. Their feet are in the hot water. When you want to add hot water to it, you do the same principle of lifting it up, have the feet to the side, add your kettle in, cover up again.
Nice.
So that's like a modification of the hot foot
And
bath.
that would be the sheet plus the blanket.
Yes, there'd be a blanket also. But that's the way that if someone's like weak and they don't feel like sitting up or they can't get out of bed, in this case with the elder, we did it in the bed because he was really sick. He's like, I'm not getting out of bed. And you can also combine this with fomentations. So you can have a person with their feet in the hot water. You could have them laying on a fomentation. So they have one on their back, and then they have their feet in the water, and then you're doing the actual fomentation treatment to the chest and stomach. That's a whole other treatment called a general revulsive. And it takes a little more practice, but you're combining like 2 treatments into one, the hot foot bath and the fomentations. And sometimes that's needed for extra boost of healing. But that's a way of adapting it. Cool, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any questions on that?
Off topic, I've seen like sometimes people put their feet on water. I don't know if there's any other chemicals, but then there's different, it changes color. What is that?
Oh, yeah.
What is that all about?
Those are like the things that like you can soak your feet in the water and it has like a jet or something and then the water turns like brown or green.
Yes.
I've seen those. I think those are more gimmicks. The idea, a gimmick is something that's like not real. It doesn't work. It's fake.
Oh, okay.
So the idea is that
It looks cool, like it detoxes you or something. I don't know.
that's the concept, is that it detoxes you and it's pulling all those toxins out and that's why the water's changing color. But I know some of those, they actually like have a dye in it itself, where even if you run it without your feet in it, it's gonna change color. Yeah, that's just like a health fad.
Yeah.
If I can just comment back to this first, that concept has been going around for a while because I remember a long time ago they actually sold patches. They were like stickers, and you would put it on the bottom of your feet, and it would change color. And I remember my grandfather had actually bought them because he believed them, and we used to make so much fun of them. We'd be like, "Oh, do you feel like bumps coming down your leg?" Feet? But it had to do with the heat. So it was the heat, the body heat, that was making it change color, not that it was actually pulling anything out. So if you want to detox, do some juicing, do the steam treatment.
You are doing detox too? You are doing the detox?
I can help people detox. What do you mean? Like doing treatments and things?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can do a detox regimen with herbs and with juicing or fasting, and then you combine that with something like the steam treatment where you're sweating.
You have the machine?
The machine? Like she's talking about? No. I offer the steam treatments. You can do it the home version like I just showed. I also have an actual like tent version in my office, a portable one that you can sit in, and it makes you hot. Uses infrared heat. But the idea is that as you sweat, then it helps you detox. But you want to be making sure you're cleaning the inside out also.
There are people doing the detox, but they have the machine. They have the machine.
What machine?
That's the same thing that
Huh?
she is talking about.
It's different.
It's the same thing.
It's the gimmick.
The gimmick?
Because I heard that.
Okay. You had a question.
Yeah. So the foliation pad obviously obviously different from like a heating pad. Or can it be used too, or?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I usually like to bring that up. So there's a heating pad. The ABC sells it. It's called a Thermophore. Has anyone heard of those? The brand that makes it is Battle Creek. You can buy them online. They're called Thermophores. I recommend everybody gets one. So it's a heating pad, but it's different than the kind of heating pads you'll find in the store. Because it reaches a higher temperature, it draws like moisture from the air to make a more moist heat, which penetrates better. And those ones you can use. It's not going to be as effective as getting like a really hot one out of the microwave or out of the steamer, but you can get benefit with that particular heating pad. So I think the majority of heating pads may not get hot enough, but that particular one, forget how hot it gets. But it gets a lot hotter, and because it's a more moist heat, then I recommend that one.
So what about electric heating pad? You have one.
This is a type of electric heating pad, but I think it gets hotter than ones that you would buy from CVS or Walmart.
What do you spell?
Thermophore. It's THERMO, like thermo. PHORE.
Oh, PHORE.
Yes, the brand is Battle Creek. They're a bit more of an expensive heating pad, so they're like $70 to $80 for one. but it is worth the investment. I own one. This organization owns one. I bought one as a gift from my best friends, who then bought it for their friends. THERMOPHORE.
$65 on Amazon.
I was just going
So you can buy them off of Amazon. You can buy them off of the website.
My
the
wife likes
companies
something.
that
She don't write it down. She ordered.
That's the company that makes them. It's called
I'll
Battle
see that in my Amazon cart tomorrow.
65, 69.
Yeah, so it depends on the size. They come in like a medium size and a larger size. I personally like the larger size, you know, and they're pretty long. They'll cover your whole back. And they can also come in 2 button styles. So either a handle that you have to hold down or a timer where after 25 minutes it'll turn itself off. So, depending on which button style and which size you're getting, depends on the cost. They go from like 60 up to 80 or 90, I think.
And that varies temperature, cold and hot, or just hot?
The kind with the button that you hold down, you hold it until it gets as hot as you want it, and then you can let it go. If you're getting the kind with the timer, then you can choose high, medium, or low. And each one has a different temperature range.
Oh yeah, I was asking. So would that replace the whole process of warming the towel and whatever? That's
So if you're like by yourself and you're trying to do a treatment like this to yourself, it's hard to get all the towels and do all of that.
yeah.
So you can use the heating pad as like a substitute. What I'm saying is it may not be as effective, you know, because these get really hot when you microwave them, but you will have benefits. Like that's a good thing. And then those are also good if you have like muscle pains, you know, aches. I've used it at night when I'm having trouble sleeping. Sometimes I'm just like, you know, my mind's wound up, you know, I'm tense, you know, I can put the heating pad over my shoulders and it just kind of helps just for a few minutes to kind of relax, like it's time to go to sleep. So it's really good to have on hand.
Melody by a couple for the health department renting.
So that was a very good question. Thank you for that.
Right now.
Because again, remember, you're working with the principle. So the principle is the hot and the cold. So you do what you can to achieve that principle. Anyways. Any other questions? That's all I have to present to you guys for this afternoon. Let's see. I didn't actually go through the titles. There you go. That's my contact information if anybody needs it. I have cards and brochures if anyone wants as well. If you have any questions in the future, but if I have property. The goal is to establish a permanent health center in the southern New England area. So the goal is to stay in Connecticut, should God provide the funds and the property. But if God were to say, go to Massachusetts, who might say no?
You can have two.
But the goal, there you go. We'll have one in Connecticut and Massachusetts. There you go, dreaming big. I like it. Well, thank you guys for being here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for being a good group. Thank you, my volunteers. And I hope that that's helpful to you. That's doable, right?
Yes.
So in Texas, I try to keep it simple so that you can go home and it's practical. You can use it. So I hope that you guys can implement some of that, and it's a blessing to you and your families.
Have you used herbs? Herbs for the treatment, like smelling?
Like essential oils?
Maybe. Well, my grandma used to, when we had colds, she will boil water with eucalyptus leaves, and then we will sit around the pot, and she will pour it with the
Yeah.
No, that's another.
like a witch.
Yeah,
That's another form of like hydrotherapy or natural remedy. When I was sick last week, I was doing that with salts. Like boiling salt water and covering your head to breathe it in. You know, so yeah, you can use essential oils and add it to, like when you're doing a hot foot bath, you can add it to it. You can use, I've noticed some people have actually hung eucalyptus in their shower. And so while they're taking the shower, so while you're taking the shower, you're getting the fragrance of the eucalyptus, you know, because the steam and the heat will help disseminate it.
All right, let's stand up, soldiers. You wanna stand? 608. Faith is the victory. Let's sing together as we wrap up that stop. Thank you so much, Nora, for coming. Thank you for having me.
608.
Oh. 608. We have an audience in that.
608.
608. Faith is the victory. Let us do all three verses. Sing together. In the
Amen. Thank you so very much. I want to ask Elder Barker to please have a special prayer for the ministry that Laura is leading, and for all of us, that we may remember the things to apply them. We have the paper copies, and hopefully, if any of our friends or family members ever get sick, we can apply them, right, and help them. So please.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, we are so grateful for your love for this church, Lord. In the past months, you've been instructing us about our health, how we should live in order to be ready to communicate with you, to spread the gospel, and finish this work on earth so that Jesus can come. You brought so many people to us, Lord, to instruct us. And we thank you especially now for Sister Dr. Laura Harris. Lord, thank you for protecting her, thank you for blessing her, thank you for all the instructions that you are putting in her head so that you can share it with us. We pray, Father, that you continue to bless her ministry. And please bring us back to us, because we need more information from her. So continue to be with her and bless us all. Help us to count on you. Help us to rely on you, Lord, so that we can live a good spiritual health, physical health, mental health, and spread the gospel also throughout the world. And his thank you, Jesus, so we pray that you bless her ministry, bless each one of us. Help us to keep those instructions that we received last night, today, and apply them in our lives so that we can live better, to communicate with you, and to get ready for going home with you, because we know you're coming soon. So bless us by the Holy Spirit. May your divine power continue to empower us so that we can be ready to do your work, get ready to meet Jesus at his kingdom. Thank you so much for loving us. Bring us, every one of us, back home safely. Bless Dr. Laura, who's going back home to Connecticut, if she's leaving today. Protect her and bless everything that she does. And be one of us also, as we count on you for everything. And thank you for loving us. Thank you for Jesus. Thank you for everything. For we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, Dr. You healthy?
And please come back tomorrow. We're starting our devotional at 7:30 a.m. We'll have breakfast at 8:30, and then we'll start our fast right after breakfast for 24 hours. If you have any dietary constrictions or health issues, feel free to bring your meals if you can keep up. But we want everybody to participate tomorrow. We're going to be studying the life of Jesus. All right, see you tomorrow. No lunch.